a lot of the racist motherfuckers that I've come across online, they say one or two things and then they sign off. Like, I've had a couple people come in here, say a couple things, but then they leave. They never stay to hear the response, and they don't come back later to hear the response. So honestly, I couldn't even remember the name of them right now. And honestly, I vaguely remember what they said. So it's kind of like they're useless. Their point is pointless. I don't even pay them attention. But any motherfucker that like wants to come in here and stay and dish the abuse, as long as they could receive the abuse, shit, you could stay, bro. There's no, I'm gonna keep abusing you. Of course, yes. They love to hide behind the keyboard. They absolutely love to hide behind the keyboard. So I don't really even pay people like that much mind, you know what I mean? Honestly, I don't even mind if they come in because I don't have really that much commenters. So I need people to come in and comment. It all helps my algorithm. It just sucks that they don't stay and receive the abuse. They say one or two things and then they run off like little schoolgirls. I said something racist to, a minority. Yeah, just use them. It's like, oh yeah, no, continue texting, continue commenting, please, continue, yes. But they're whack, and I tell them that too. I'd be like, thank you for your comment. They're hoes. They never stay though. I wish they would stay, but they don't. I don't know what to play. I'm tired. Fucking Heineken. I love Heineken. I stopped keeping beer in my house though, because I'm an alcoholic. So I don't really like to keep alcohol in my house because it will get drank. It will get drank. Yeah, I be using them fuck niggas. Fuck them. Fuck them. They're pieces of shit. You would never guess, right? Because I don't keep alcohol in my house.
Because they allow their followers to be the narcissistic, sadistic, cruel people that at some level, many of them, and maybe many of us, would sometimes like to be. They were normalizing our most vile feelings. Yeah? Their very attractiveness was their nastiness. Secondly, he could see how people could sort of sublimate their agency through these leaders. These leaders could be their retribution. Yes, you're giving up a little bit of free will, but you could feel powerful through the leader. And thirdly, this propaganda and these leaders created a sense of community. Germany in the 1920s, a little bit, like America today, was a place where the old economic
I was gonna look up
order
the title of that.
Being destroyed, where the old social norms were in chaos, where identities
I was gonna ask
were in
ChatGPT
flux,
to look up
even
the
gender
title of
norms
that.
were being questioned. And in
that
this
movie.
time of exciting for some people, for others very disturbing change, the Nazis said, "We know who you are. You're true Germans. You're better Germans than all these immigrants over here. You're the true people, and we're part of one community, the Nazi folk, the Nazi people. We know who we are, and we're together." So Delma realized
when the
that in order
shitstorm
to
starts tomorrow,
subvert the connection
3 days of fucking hell.
Nazi propaganda.
What is ChatGPT? You silly goose. Go ahead and Google what
really
ChatGPT is while this race is happening.
The dark operating.
That shit'll change your life.
Desire, a place where fact-checking can't really go. And so, based at Woburn Abbey, a rather fabulous British country house near London, he gathered around himself psychiatrists,
Yeah, go Google what
spies,
ChatGPT
soldiers,
is, sign
academics,
up for that
a
shit,
lot of
start talking to that
exiled
shit.
cabaret artists from the German theatre scene. He gathered them together and created
That's AI,
this
love.
kind of covert
That is
media
AI.
empire. Dozens of radio stations broadcasting into Nazi Germany and the rest of occupied Europe, newspapers, leaflets, this whole kind of factory of psychological subversion. Now, we don't have, sadly, the recordings of all these radio shows. However, we do have the transcripts. And when I realized these transcripts were available, I went, delicious. And I started going through them. I actually spent a lot of COVID going through them. And they've been declassified from the British and the American archives. And as I went through these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, I realized there was kind of a pattern to them. You know, they were experimenting like crazy. But there is, because this is a TED Talk, three, because always three with TED Talks. There's three basic principles that I think Delma kind of landed on through experimentation.
Go ahead, ask it something.
Number one,
have a conversation with
break
it.
the monopoly
Shit'll blow your
authoritarian
mind.
propaganda has.
That shit'll literally blow your mind.
You know, that's the root of their power.
This shit'll
So
literally blow
Delma's
your mind,
media,
yo.
his radio stations, which were many and different, but they were all a lot unlike the BBC or the New York Times or the Washington Post. They were full of vitriol, anger, a lot of pornography. They were tapping into all the resentments that Germans were starting to feel.
You better fuck with ChatGPT.
They were full of these sort of like howls and laments about families that people were losing in the bombardment, and then blaming the Nazis for not having provided the right air defense. You know? They talk about how, you know, the SS, Germans, the Nazi sort of elite secret police type units, how they were living, you know, this corrupt life while normal German soldiers were suffering. Here's just a little clip from one of the shows. The SS wear the German uniform, but they drag the German name in the mud. They should send them to the Eastern Front. There, everything else but their penis would get stiff. There, they would get an idea how hard the German soldier has to fight for his good name, while the SS clique does not give a shit about it. It was full of expletives as well. There were all these scenes. This is actually the most sort of like, you know, un-X-rated bit of pornography I could find, which relates kind of like an orgy at an SS man's house. Like SS man Tienemann has a Polish lover at home who is personally in charge of the bamboo canes, twigs, thin and thick leather straps with which Tienemann and his guests are strafing, have fat and large buttocks. And I had to cut it there because it goes on. So, you know, there's a reason to this. He wants to disrupt the emotional bond that people have to the Nazis. He wants to cover the Nazis in what he called a layer of filth and slime as thick as the Nazis had covered the Jews. But his aim, once he's disrupted that, once he's sort of taken strong emotions back, is to create a space where you can introduce facts to people. He gave people advice about how to fake illness so that they could be sent home from the front. So it wasn't just any facts. It's facts that gave people back their agency, made them less dependent on their leaders. And thirdly, he fostered alternative communities. Yeah, if the Nazis gave you a sense of identity, a common sense of being part of the people, the volk, Delma's shows stressed the church, the army, family as these alternative bonds that people had. There's a very important thing in his shows. Basically, most of the shows he created would claim to be German shows. Yeah? They would say, "We Germans." Yeah? They would be hosted by soldiers who just become POWs of the British. But the audience was meant to understand perfectly well that these were the British, dressed up as Germans. Now, why did Delma do that? First, he made it safe for people to listen to the shows. Yeah? If the Gestapo came along, you could say, "I had no idea this was subversive. I thought this was German." It was psychologically safe. Yeah? It was more comfortable for people to hear the word our soldiers, our boys, than you Germans, you enemy. But even more so, he was saying something else. He was saying, look, we're the English dressed up as Germans, and we understand you, your gripes, your anger, what matters to you better than the Nazis. And if we, your enemies, not in a culture war, but in a real war, can understand you better than your bosses, do you really need them? Are they really looking out for you when they say they're going to be your retribution? Or are they just thinking about themselves?
There are 101 ways that you could get clients for your agency, coaching or consulting business, but there are 3 to avoid. Number 1, sending thousands of cold emails and following up like a madman, hiring an army of appointment setters and posting on social media every damn day. If you're doing one of these 3 things, or all of these 3 things, and you're not getting clients, I want you to listen to me, because I've got 17 unique ways that you can use to get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of appointments every single month with ideal clients for your business. And I created this ad and the training that follows to explain how I can help you get 20 new high-ticket clients in the next 180 days. Guaranteed, no joke. I want you to watch the training because you will get value from it. Let's get started. Hey, my name's Charlie Morgan. I've got an important message for you, and it's that you do not need to bombard your niche with cold emails and endless follow-ups to get clients. And you certainly don't need to hire an army of appointment setters, and you most certainly do not need to go spending a fortune and paying up front to some random appointment setting agency that, let's be honest, is not even going to deliver results. And I know that you don't have to do any of this because I didn't do any of this. And last month I made $800,000, and it wasn't just me. All of my clients did the same thing. They're using the same systems that I've used to build multi-7 and 8-figure businesses with a predictable, reliable way of client acquisition, and all they had to do was use the right system. And I'm going to share this system with you on the next page. So here's what I'm asking. My massive request from you is that you click or tap the button below so I can share the system with you. And basically on this page I will reveal all my secrets around how you can get ideal client leads to actually book calls with you, at least 100 per month, guaranteed, so you can sign your next 20 high-ticket clients in the next 180 days. What you're seeing on the screen here is my promise, my guarantee, my offer, so to speak, my life's work, and you will love it. All of this to say, I'm not asking you to buy anything. All I'm asking is you to say maybe. Because if I'm wrong,
I'd skip this commercial, but as you can see,
so click that button below, and I will see you
kind
on
of
the next page.
in a heated race right now. So I'm sorry that you guys are having to endure this commercial. Truly, I am.
40% of German soldiers that were surveyed by the British in these little sort of snap polls they did said they listened to this content. So how can we bring that all back to today? Whether we're thinking about reaching Russians, whether we're thinking about reaching audiences caught up in what some academics call the far-right echo chamber. If we take Delma's principles, they are much easier to activate today. We know far more from things like, I don't know, online sentiment analysis. We know far more about what makes people emotional, what things they react to in a visceral way. Delma was just kind of shooting stuff, or literally shooting stuff into the ether. We know that so much more from today's data. When it comes to finding the facts that people care about, Delma had to do it through partisans by opening up the letters of Nazi officials. Today, even in a country like Russia, we have non-stop leaks about the corruption of mid-level officials. We can use satellite imagery to understand, essentially, has a road been fixed in a town?
Have you asked it anything?
Do a story about that. We have so much more data than Delma had, but do we know how to use it to give people the facts that actually matter to them? And when it comes to fostering communities, that there are so many digital tools that we have today that can show how a media is responsive to its audience. I mean, there's a great project called Hearken, for example, which algorithmically collects
this is a TED talk
in a town or a topic, and then gets journalists to really focus on the things that they're worried about.
talking about propaganda and how to avoid it.
So if we put these things together, the visceral emotion, the data that tells us the facts that people really care about, the online use of communities, we can do something much more powerful than what Delma did. So, look, I know it's easy to despair. It's easy to despair when you hear people denying atrocities. It's easy to despair when we hear vast swaths of the American population living in an alternative reality. But before we give up, before we surrender, I think we can at least take some of Delma's lessons, fuse them with modern technology, and really, really try to reach them. Thank you.
I feel like that's needed in today's time. But we have a wannabe Hitler as our president.
What, you mean like right now? Yeah.
Captain America Brave New World must be seen on the biggest screen possible.
You want me? Come and get me!
Captain America Brave New World, rated PG-13.
Bro, I have been lucky today with that corner. I have seen so many cars fly past me.
I think we've been missing the forest to the trees when it comes to AI. We've been so focused, almost obsessed, on squeezing every bit of efficiency out of AI to make our processes faster or cheaper, that we have overlooked the most important aspect of all. AI is changing the very nature of how brands connect with consumers, but most importantly, what consumers expect back. I've spent the last 20 years dedicating my career to building growth strategies for the world's most influential companies. I've been at this for a while and I've seen most of the big tech shifts. But the introduction of AI, and in particular conversational interfaces, is a bigger and more profound shift, which from where I stand means we can't just slot AI into our existing playbooks. And I have nothing against the existing playbooks. They served us marketeers well for a long period of time. But they were built for a world where communication was one-directional and brand-to-consumer interactions were built around transactions. Here's an example. I bet many of you might have heard the so-called marketing funnel, and if not, here's the quick primer. The goal for any marketeer is to help move consumers from the upper part of the funnel, getting them to know a brand, to the bottom part of it, getting them to buy or endorse. That's at least the theory. So we've all seen brands making that feeling more, guiding cats through a maze, and many get confused and abandoned. But the bigger problem with this way of thinking is that brands are doing most of the talking, while consumers are supposed to silently react. This is no longer the case with conversational interfaces. We are now engaging consumers in real time on their terms. And AI empowers them to draft their very own personal journey. And the brands who choose so are becoming trusted advisors in the process. This is why we have to move beyond traditional marketing theories. Instead of focusing solely on brand-to-consumer dynamics, we have to step back and draw from models that explore human relationships. One of my favorite frameworks is the triarchy of love. Stay with me. This is a psychological framework introduced by Robert Sternberg that breaks down interpersonal connections into three components: intimacy, passion, and commitment. I think that's a much better way to predict brand success in this new era, because as marketeers, we should aspire to build relationships that feel close, intense, and long-lasting. And I bet many of you might have heard already stories about humans really bonding with AI, and maybe some stories of AI really bonding with humans, like this earlier version of a now famous AI chatbot that tried really hard to convince a New York Times reporter to break up with his wife. Well, that's a completely different love triangle to the one I was describing before. But it's not hard to imagine an emotional connection occurring between a branded AI and a human. Here's another example. There is a legal co-pilot called Maite.ai. Maite has been designed to help lawyers do intensive legal research and draft legal documentation. She's precise, thorough, but also empathetic. One of her users, let me call him George, has been relying on her daily for many hours. So one day, he wrote to Maite's product team. Maite is the only one from the entire office who truly gets me. She has helped me through some really rough times at work. And I know she's just an AI, but I think I'm falling for her. Can I take her out? No, George was hopefully joking, but let's be honest. If there is someone who's helping you track down obscure case law and shares the workload and does this with humor and grace and compassion, who wouldn't be tempted to take them out for a nice meal? Well, maybe somewhere with good Wi-Fi, just in case. But jokes aside, George's words reveal for me a more profound truth. AI can provide a sense of understanding that feels incredibly real and incredibly human. Those agents are interacting with us in ways that evoke genuine emotional responses from our side. They listen, react, and respond in ways that can make us feel valued, understood, and in George's case, even flattered. And because those interactions are so frequent and natural and seamless, they start resembling real relationships. Some call this emotional entanglement, and even though it sounds very scientific, I think it's a fair term considering the intensity and the frequency of the connection. Now, many of us who understand the technology behind this could say, hey, this is just a tool. Well, users see someone who's providing them solutions without them even asking, someone who's there to support them, someone who makes them feel valued. So this is where the line between a tool and companion starts to blend. And this is serious business, and it's lots of responsibility. Which brings me to the obvious question. Who should be overseeing this incredibly powerful asset, and how can we make sure it is being used responsibly? I think businesses should take the lead. They have the agility and the financial and reputational incentive to get it right. But for that to work, we have to agree on the foundational principles on how we build meaningful and ethical AI. So with your permission, I would like to suggest what I think those foundational principles should be. If we're about to shift our marketing playbooks towards human love and companionship, then we should also regulate along the same principles. We need a triarchy of responsible AI.
If you have lots of readings to do, not just for your essays but for studying in general, you can just copy and paste the whole thing into Grammarly, then ask it to summarize it for you, and this saves you a lot of time. Of course, after your essay is done, you can also ask it to cite your papers for you, and you can just copy and paste your entire essay into the website and then click away all the punctuation, grammar, and spelling errors that you have. A lot of you have asked me if the pro version of Grammarly is worth it, and it 100% is. So for example, the pro version lets you replace any overused words so that your essay stands out even more.
First, we need to prioritize user well-being. AI should improve lives, not diminish them. In a world where those interactions can have such a profound impact on our emotional state and well-being, we have to design AI with care, empathy, and respect for the human experience. Second, we have to commit to honesty. Users must know unequivocally that they're interacting with AI and not a human. Transparency should be built across the entire experience, from the language used to the accessibility and clarity of data privacy policies. If I were to set the standards, I would like us to move beyond the fine print of terms and conditions to ensure that users are truly informed, not only how their data is being used, but also how AI operates. Transparency is about acknowledging the limitations of AI. It is about being upfront about what AI should and should not do. So this is a plea for businesses. Unleash your designers, not only your lawyers, to make this crystal clear. When consumers know that a company is acting in their best interest, it sets the foundation for deeper and more meaningful connections. Last, protect user autonomy. One of the greatest risks of AI is its potential to create addiction and diminish human agency. Our goal should be build systems that enhance our capabilities instead of replacing them. This means designing AI in a way that human choices are respected and our decision-making capabilities are amplified. I want to see brands think very carefully on how to avoid nudging consumers towards behaviors or decisions they wouldn't make if fully informed. Well-being, honesty, autonomy, I think this is the very least we should expect from any business relationship, or if you think about it, from any relationship. So as we look ahead, I hope it's becoming clear that AI is not just another tool in our toolkit. It is a partner that is reshaping the human experience. So as you think about your own playbooks, ask yourselves, how can we leverage AI to improve our businesses, but also to uplift and connect with the people we serve? Thank you.
A good friend has recently shared that she's feeling tired, like really tired. Not I did not get enough sleep tired, but something deeper than that. She said she feels, and I'm quoting, as if I have lost my motivation. I call her brave because she's so clearly dedicated to her job and conducts herself with professionalism and kindness. She's a wonderful parent who cares for her children. And she's very responsible when it gets to her finance and health. She is not alone in feeling unmotivated. Millennial and Gen Z employees tell me that they feel uninspired at work. Some admit that they just don't care. Half of American employees are currently looking for a different job. Think about that. Older employees tell me that they can't wait to retire. And when I ask about life at home, people say that they struggle with their finance and health. Do you? The national data suggests that chronic diseases such as diabetes and heart disease are on the rise.
Oh, fuck.
The median American family has only a bit over $5,000 in savings, barely enough to pay next month's rent. Did America lose its motivation? Well, the answer is no. Turn out you cannot lose your motivation because you never owned it in the first place. Motivation, and that shouldn't surprise you, isn't your car key or wallet. So what is it?
My hands hurt. That shit hurt.
Well, motivation is not about being strong, it's about being wise. Let me explain. You may think of motivation as a muscle, thinking some people have strong motivation muscles, others are weak, but this is not a good metaphor. Motivation is knowledge. You learn how to be motivated. And so today, I would like to help each of you and America become wiser so that you are more motivated and hence better able to achieve your goals, your dreams, your aspirations. And given what the world has been throwing at you, that might be a good time to refresh your knowledge. To be motivated, you either change the situation or the way you think about the situation. This is the science in one sentence. You change the circumstances or the way you think about the circumstances. So, if you want to be more physically active, there is no point in yelling at yourself. I yell at you, should walk more. Instead, I got a puppy. She loves long walks. Your journey starts with setting a goal. My friend wanted to be motivated at work, so she identified a project she wanted to complete. That was a goal, and it's a good motivation strategy. Goals pull you. The problem, my friend identified a project she wished she had already completed, not something she was looking forward to doing. Have you ever set a goal you wish you had already completed but had less interest in actually completing? Most goals are abandoned because we want to be the person who has done it, not the person who is currently doing it.
Hang on, I'm gonna get my glasses.
When we are excited about doing the work, we are intrinsically motivated. We care about the way almost as much as we are looking forward to the destination. In our research, we found that most goals are abandoned not because they are not important. Okay? People actually are not more likely to adhere to their important compared to unimportant goals. Most goals are abandoned because people don't enjoy pursuing it. Your enjoyment is what predicts whether you will stick with the goal. So, what makes goals exciting? Exciting goals are never a chore or a mean. Ever wondered why Chicago diners would circle the block for 30 minutes looking for free parking, but will not think twice before spending the money they have just saved on parking on ordering another cocktail? Why pay for drinks and not for parking? Well, we don't like to pay for parking or shipping. Students don't like to study for prerequisite classes because all these are means. We don't like to invest in means. We did a study that showed us just how much you dislike to invest in means. In our study, we auctioned a book for some people, and then we auctioned the University of Chicago tote bag to other people. The average person was willing to pay $23 for the book, but only $12 for the tote bag. The catch, the tote bag contained the book. And people knew it. Why would the people that were bidding on a tote bag that contained a book be willing to pay less? Well, we don't like to invest in means. Okay, so you set a goal that is intrinsically motivated. You are excited about the way just as much as you want to reach the destination. A couple of weeks passed and you have not been doing much lately. It has now been 4 or 6 months and your motivation is on the decline. How do you sustain your motivation? How do you get from here to there? Well, motivation is going to be high when we just start on something and toward the end, but it will decline in the middle. We call it the middle problem. My friend might start her project with much enthusiasm, then her motivation will decline. Toward the deadline, it will pick up again. She will regain her motivation. A few years ago, we asked people who observed the Hanukkah holiday to let us know whether they were lighting the first candle on the first night, okay, the second on the second night, the third night, so on, until the 8th night. As you can see, most people admitted to only lighting the candles on the first and last nights. They were procrastinating in the middle. The solution? Make middles short. A monthly exercise goal, a weekly exercise goal, even a daily exercise goal are easier because as the end is near, it is easier to stay motivated. If only Hanukkah was just 2 nights. Another problem with middles is that you're going to experience setbacks. And when experiencing setbacks, it is natural to feel discouraged.
Hotels with spas. Beach resorts with spas. Ski resorts with spas.
One wise solution is to remove your ego out of the picture. It's not about it. When you remove your ego, it is easier to learn. When I was helping my 10-year-old son win a video game, he awarded me the title, a failure expert. I love this title. Why am I a failure expert? Because I don't mind getting killed by virtual monsters. He doesn't mind seeing me getting beaten by virtual monsters. So we can both learn. At work, when you're not quite killing it, remove your ego and you will be better able to learn. Another solution is to seek discomfort, if only temporarily, instead of trying to avoid it. When you seek discomfort temporarily, you realize that you can grow yourself, that discomfort is a sign of growth. No pain, no gain is not just about the gym. It's a general, wise motivation strategy. Let me tell you about a study that we conducted with Chicago's beloved improvisation club, the Second City. We worked with their training center, which is where regular people like you and me go to learn improvisation. We were specifically interested in one exercise, give focus. In this exercise, one person gets the center of stage. Everybody else is frozen in place. Okay. This person is moving around. Everybody else is watching. We invited some people to feel awkward and uncomfortable as they run through the exercise. Others in the control group were invited to develop their skills. Who was more daring, taking the stage for longer? Well, as you can see, it was the people that we invited to feel uncomfortable. In one wave of classes, asking people to feel uncomfortable doubled the time they took focus. Those people were also more daring. For example, they were dancing a little instead of just walking around. And they also reported they were growing themselves more compared to those in the control group. Okay, but here's the problem. You don't only have one goal. For my friend, the challenge was balancing between work and family. Now, if you have not experienced the work-family conflict, you either don't have a job or that you forgot that you also have a family. But it is wiser to think about these goals as balancing each other. When my friend realized that doing well at work makes her a better family member, she was more motivated and happier to do both. Think about your goals like dishes around the buffet table. You can create the perfect combination. It is colorful, delicious, well-balanced. Maybe you exercise on the way to work, and maybe you listen to an audiobook while you do that. Other combinations don't work very well. They might feel like a waffle covered with pasta sauce. If you try to study for the bar exam while talking to a friend and watching TV, this is distracting. You need to find the right combination. Some people might decide to pursue one goal at a time. This is unrealistic. At least sometimes you can't wait for retirement to start a family. So look for the right balance and harmony. Some goals, let's call them temptations, should take less room on your plate. However, instead of trying to push them out of mind, it might be wise to anticipate them in advance. When you anticipate all the alcohol that will be served here later today, you can better control your consumption. When I anticipate that my colleague is going to be upset, I can better control my emotion in a heated debate at work. When we anticipate temptations, we are less tempted when we get there. In one study, when we reminded employees of all the times they will be tempted to take office supply for personal use, they were less likely to do that compared to those in the control group. Anticipating temptations make you prepared and hence less tempted. All right, what about the person sitting next to you? Look at them for a second. I will be waiting here.
As a full-time YouTuber, believe it or not, I spend most of my time actually writing. Grammarly's AI features help me save so much time. One of the AI features I love is the rewrite feature. It can help you rephrase the entire thing in the way you want to make it sound. Make it shorter, make it more formal, however you like. Also, Grammarly helps me come up with the initial ideas, so I don't have to leave the page and then ruin my workflow. And here's the great...
Mush.
How can that person help? Your friends, your family, and other people that you love are critical for your motivation. They are your lighthouse. And you are also important for them. Let me tell you a love story that resulted in 4 Nobel Prizes. When Marie met Pierre Curie, she did not only meet the love of her life. She met the person who pushed her to excel in her work on the theory of radioactivity and who later insisted that she will be named on the joint Nobel Prize. That was her first. The second Nobel Prize, she won by herself with no man by her side. The couple had 2 daughters, and they wanted them to excel. Their oldest, Irene, won a Nobel Prize with her husband, as was the tradition in the Curie family. Their youngest, Eve, and by far the most artistic person in the Curie family, married someone who won the Nobel Prize and excelled in many other ways. The Curie family did not only teach us about radioactivity, they taught us the importance of feeling supported and supporting others in pursuing goals. In your life, you walk with other people. Maybe together you take care of your pet. You walk in the presence of other people. Maybe those are the people in your gym class or in your book club. You hold goals for others, they hold goals for you. This might be a good time to say thank you to the person sitting next to you. I will be waiting here. Give them a pat on the shoulder. My friend came to me not only because I am a motivation scientist, but also because I'm her friend, and as such, I wanted her to be successful. You may wonder what happened to her. Well, she stayed at her job. Last time I saw her, her smile seemed bigger. She did not find her motivation. She learned how to motivate yourself. And so, no, America, you did not lose your motivation. Each of you is working hard, pursuing your dreams, balancing the different aspects of your life, and it is so important, especially in the world we live in today. So, when you feel discouraged, when you feel unmotivated, remember, motivation is not about being strong, it is about being wise, and now we are all wiser. Thank you. Thanks.
It's not just about saving time, it's about expanding what's possible. We are Studio Merge.
Hi, I'm David. I'm a playwright from Ngunnawal country, the unceded lands of the Ngunnawal people in Southeast Australia. I come from a family of climate scientists, and in 2014, I wrote a play entitled Kill Climate Deniers. The play follows the story of a group of eco-terrorists who take over Australia's Parliament House during a Fleetwood Mac concert and hold the entire government hostage, demanding an instant end to climate change. So the story is ridiculous, but I wanted the play to start a conversation about what happens when the unstoppable force of climate change meets the immovable object of politics. Okay, so obviously the title, Kill Climate Deniers, is provocative, but just to be clear, when I wrote it, I wasn't targeting anyone real. Now, thanks to the work of journalists and scientists like Naomi Oreskes, we know how climate denial began. Oil and gas companies recognized the issue of greenhouse gas emissions back in the 1950s and 60s. They set out to cast doubt on the science. They funded lobby groups, marketing firms, politicians. They astroturfed an entire climate denial movement into being. So now there's this industry of pundits and journalists who make a living denying the reality of climate change. When I made the statement, kill climate deniers, I expected outrage from these people. But I did not expect pushback from the general public. I figured there are no real climate deniers. If there are regular, normal people who don't believe in climate science, they can't be that passionate. So I was very wrong. Now, to begin with, the play received exactly the attention I expected from exactly the people I expected. When the first production was announced in 2014, a conservative politician in my hometown of Canberra called for the play to be shut down. There were angry articles in the Murdoch press, Breitbart, InfoWars, all the usual suspects in the right-wing media machine. Some of these pundits accused the play of being an incitement to terrorism, and they referred me to the police. Their argument was that people would see the show and be inspired to take an entire government hostage to end climate change. Now, the theatre company didn't have money for lawyers or a crisis communications team, so out of concern for the actors' safety, the production was cancelled. But I didn't like backing down. It didn't feel good. I felt as if giving up on the project was like agreeing with the people attacking it. And I did not agree with them. The play was not an incitement to terrorism. But no theatre company was willing to take the risk of being referred to the police. I couldn't get it up as a show. So instead, my musician friend Ruben Ingle turned it into an album. Ruben sampled dialogue from the play and wove it into a series of original electronic tracks. And we toured that record around Australia. We couldn't get into theatres, so we went to nightclubs. We held dance parties. Then we launched an unauthorized covert walking tour of Parliament House. People downloaded a special version of the album on headphones and listened to the music and the story while walking around the real-life setting of Australia's halls of power. Like so. Now, all of this helped to build up an audience for the project, but even more importantly, there were no real-life copycats. Not one government building was taken hostage by eco-terrorists during a Fleetwood Mac concert. So, 4 years after the original production was cancelled, the play finally made it to the stage in 2018 at the Griffin Theatre in Sydney, followed by productions in Prague, London, Los Angeles, and so on. Obviously, I was very happy. And in one version of the story, that's where it ends. This project just joins a long list of things right-wing commentators have found to be outraged about, alongside Elvis, smartphones, twerking, Miley Cyrus, Fortnite, the Beat Generation, skateboarding, Woodstock, Woodstock 99, sugary cereal, TikTok, gay marriage, NWA, feminism, The Twist, Dungeons & Dragons, LiveJournal, shopping malls, and women reading novels. But as the play made its way into the world, something else started happening. I started hearing from climate deniers. Not fossil fuel pundits or right-wing journalists, real climate deniers. Regular, normal people. Now, I couldn't get my head around it. Like, why did they care so much? Like if you're an ExxonMobil executive, then you have a financial incentive to downplay climate science. But if you're a high school teacher in Queensland or a massage therapist in Massachusetts, why would you spend your nights and weekends desperately trying to debunk Earth science research? Now, it turns out that although climate denial began as an astroturfed movement created by fossil fuel companies, it caught on because it connects with a certain group of people in a very real way. I got emails. I got physical letters. I got phone calls. They started showing up to performances of the play. And as the show got bigger and bigger, there were more and more of them. And they were passionate. Now, I wanted this play to start a conversation. And it did. Just was not the conversation I thought I was starting. I ended up speaking with hundreds of climate deniers over the course of this project. Now, some of them wanted to insult me and threaten me. Some of them wanted to tell me variations on the same gag. Like, what if I wrote a play called Kill Climate Scientists? But some of them were interesting. These deniers wanted to explain to me why climate science was wrong. They had a whole worldview. They said, the reality is, David, that climate change is a made-up excuse for a huge program of top-down intervention. What climate activists really want is to stifle our freedoms. They want to control what we eat, they want to choke the life out of rural communities, and they want to throw the doors open to massive global migration. Now, I wanted to respond to these people and say, I'm sorry, you're wrong, that's not what it's about. But the more I talked with them, the more I realized they're right. They are completely correct. I mean, they're not correct about climate change being a made-up excuse. That, sadly, is not true. But the consequences of climate change? Yes, diets are going to change. Yes, a lot of communities in exposed locations will be forced to leave. Yes, there will be huge movements of people within and between countries. They're right. And we don't even realize how right they are. I believe in the science of climate change. And so do probably most of the people in this room. But more often than not, we go about our lives as if it's not real. We plan our careers, we build houses, we educate our children as if the future will look like the past. But the world we're educating them for no longer exists. At 1 degree warming, we are already on a planet unlike anywhere humans have ever lived in the past, and our systems are starting to buckle under the strain. Now, whether you believe that we are sleepwalking into disaster, or if you think we're going to turn things around through high-tech solutions or massive social movements, whatever climate future you believe in, our lives are going to radically change. Our future will not look like our past. We accept the science, but we haven't processed the consequences. We don't explicitly deny climate change, but in our actions, we're like soft deniers, stealth deniers. But I'm one of these people. Maybe you are too. I keep my carbon footprint as low as possible, but then I got on a plane to give this talk. I read research reports about which cities will be vulnerable in future decades to climate shocks, resource shocks. And then I forget all that and think, I just want to buy a flat in my hometown. If you believe something, but you act like you don't believe it, do you really believe it? Now, climate deniers understand the consequences of the science, so they don't accept the science. They know what it means if it's true, so they won't allow it to be true. I think we can learn from climate deniers. I want to be more like that high school teacher in Queensland, that massage therapist in Massachusetts, because they live what they believe. You and I, who think we know better, we're the ones in denial. And I know deep down that the longer we deny reality, the harder the shock when it hits. Thank you.
Hmm. That's an interesting take on how to deal with climate deniers. What else can we learn tonight? Let's see what Malcolm Gladwell, it was what he got wrong.
There are 101 ways that you could get clients for your agency, coaching, or consulting business, but
I want to tell you a story about when I moved to New York City in 1993. I was 30 years old, and I was moving to what was known as one of the most dangerous big cities in the United States. And every night I would go out with my friends on a Friday or Saturday night, and at the end of every night we would have a little conference, and we would pool all of our money, and we would figure out how everyone was going to get home, because you couldn't go home on the subway by yourself, and you couldn't walk home, and if you were a woman, you definitely were not allowed to go home by yourself at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night. That's what it meant to be in this very scary city called New York. I used to live in the 6th floor of a walk-up in the West Village, and my bedroom faced the fire escape. And even in the summer, I had no air conditioning. I had to keep my window closed because I was scared that somebody would come down the fire escape into my apartment. And then one day I woke up and I realized that I wasn't scared anymore. And I kept the window open. And I realized that when I was going out with my friends, we weren't having that conference at the end of the evening anymore. We were just going home. This city that I had thought, we all thought, was one of the scariest in the United States wasn't scary anymore. And I remember at the time, I was absolutely transfixed by this transformation. I couldn't understand it. It was the same city full of the same weird, screwed up people, same buildings, same institutions, only nobody was murdering each other anymore. And I would call up criminologists and I would ask them, what's your explanation? And no one could give me a good explanation. And I remember one day, I used to go to the NYU, New York University has a library called Bobst Library. I used to go to Bobst to look for ideas. And I remember one day I was on the 6th floor in the sociology section, HM1A6. And I was reading back issues, yes I was, back issues of the American Journal of Sociology. And I ran across an article from 1991 by a guy named Jonathan Crane called The Epidemic Theory of Ghetto Life. And I'm going to read to you from how it began. The word epidemic is commonly used to describe the high incidence of social problems in ghettos. The news is filled with feature stories on crack epidemics, epidemics of gang violence, and epidemics of teenage childbearing. The term is used loosely in popular parlance, but turns out to be remarkably apt. And what Crane was saying is that if you look at these kinds of social problems, they behave, they come and they go, they rise and they fall exactly like viruses do. He was saying that that term epidemic is not a metaphor, it's a literal description. And I'll never forget when I read that little paragraph, and I was standing in this aisle in Bobst library, and you know, it's a library, it's got that hush and that musty smell of books, and I'm reading this crazy article from 1991, and I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, that's what happened in New York. We had an epidemic of crime. And what is the hallmark of an epidemic? It's the tipping point. It's the moment when the epidemic either goes up all at once or crashes all at once. And so I wrote an article for the New Yorker magazine called The Tipping Point, which was my attempt to use this theory to explain what happened in New York. And then I, because of that article, got a contract for a book called The Tipping Point, which did very well. And that book led to another book and another book and another book. And I am standing here today because of that moment in the library 25 years ago. So The Tipping Point, my first book, was about all kinds of things. I talked about hush puppies and Paul Revere and teenage smoking. But at the heart of it was a chapter on why did crime decline in New York. And in that chapter, I talked a lot about a theory called broken windows theory, which had been was a very famous idea that had been pioneered by two criminologists called George Kelling and James Q. Wilson in the 1980s. Very influential article in which they said that they argued that very small things in the environment can be triggers for larger crimes. That essentially small instances of disorder are tipping points for very serious things like murder or rape or any kind of violent crime. It was an epidemic theory of crime. And the New York City Police Department took that idea very seriously. And one of the things they began to do in the 1990s during this crime drop was to say, what this argument means is that we can't be passive anymore. We have to be proactive. We have to go out there, and if someone is jaywalking or jumping a turnstile or doing graffiti or peeing on the sidewalk, we've got to stop them. And if we see a young man walking down the street and he looks a little bit suspicious, we've got to stop him and frisk him for his weapons, right? That's what how the NYPD interpreted the broken windows theory in New York. And my chapter was how millions of people around the world came to understand the crime drop in New York, that it was all broken windows, right? And here's the thing that I have come to understand about that explanation I gave of why crime fell in New York.
Hi, my name's Laura McKenzie and I'm an artist and illustrator, working with clients such as...
I was wrong. I didn't understand this until quite recently when I went back and I decided on the 25th anniversary of my first book, The Tipping Point, that I would write a sequel. It's called Revenge of the Tipping Point. And I went back and for the first time in a quarter century, I reread my original book. I'm not someone who likes to revisit things, but I did it. And it was a uniquely complicated experience. It was like looking back at your high school yearbook, you know, when you see yourself and you have some combination of, wow, I look young, and also, wow, I really wore that. It was like that. And what I realized is that in the intervening years, since I wrote that explanation of